All right, so welcome everyone again to today's workshop. This is actually the final workshop of the semester for us at the Grad Academy, and I'm Melissa Gardner, if we haven't met before. You're joining us today for the Use Your Voice, Preparing to Comment Professionally at Public Events workshop with Dr. Constance Brooks, the Vice President of Government and Community Engagement at UNLV. So in this workshop, we'll look to gain some insights into how to prepare commentary in public forums, how to relate your message to the broader view of the student body, and how to make an impact by speaking with intention and professionalism, and so much more. So I'm going to go ahead and share your slides here, Dr. Brooks, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Alyssa. I really appreciate your assistance in both preparing for today as well as being my DJ for this party. I really appreciate it. I always say having to run your own PowerPoint while you're presenting and sharing slides is like DJing your own party, which sometimes isn't as fun, right? So, at any rate, I am more than pleased to be with you all today. And I just want to start by saying thank you for taking the time out of your busy calendars to both develop yourselves professionally, but also just to understand how you can be an advocate for yourself, your peers, and for this great institution. I was once in your shoes as I like to call myself a double rebel. I have 2 degrees through the graduate college, a master's in social work, and a PhD in public affairs. And I also teach in the School of Social Work, in addition to gratefully serving as your vice president for government and community engagement and a member of the president's cabinet. My office is located in the Gateway office, and gratefully, I am right next door to the grad college. Woohoo! I always say it's my second favorite unit on campus because obviously I love my own unit the best. But I have very, very fond memories and such an allegiance toward the graduate college, and am extremely grateful for the programming offerings such as this, the coaching, the support, and the mentorship that I received as a student really helped lay the foundation for who I am as a professional today. And so, I see myself in each of you, and I'm grateful that you all are here today. And I will just end my intro by saying here's a bit of irony around me teaching you how to use your voice when I'm actually losing my voice because of a cold and just, being on the go and working nonstop around some issues here recently. So please pardon my raspiness, and I do have a cough. I got a cough drop in, but we're going to make our way through and we're going to have a nice time here. Feel free to ask questions. There are no dumb questions at all. Okay. I consider it a missed opportunity if you don't ask a question. So please don't be shy. Raise your hand. And if you are uncomfortable asking in this setting, feel free to email me or connect with me. Come by my office. I'm always available, or should I try to be available, I should say, to assist you. So thank you. All right. Well, that said, Alyssa, you can go to the next slide. That's how we have a MSW student in the mix. So thank you for the shout out. Go social workers. All right. So I'd like to start by sharing just a little bit about my office because I also know that many people on campus, understand that we have some lobbying activity that happens in the realm of advocacy to help support the mission of our institution. But in addition to help, seek funding and to grow our programs and also to align ourselves with the vision of President Whitfield. But essentially what this office does is that we are all things external. So we are an office that essentially works with our local government, federal government, state government, in addition to our community organizations and community leaders to help advance the mission of the university. And what I mean by that is that one, we're a publicly funded institution and a public institution such that we have an obligation to be good stewards around the funding that we receive and that we need to make ourselves a resource to the community. And so many of you may be aware of some of the great things that we do as far as, the practice providing mental health services at low cost to the community. our cybersecurity clinic that provides free consultation to new businesses around cyber issues and to make themselves more protected. And the list goes on and on and on. And so one of the things, many of the things that my office does is to connect the community to these wonderful resources, to, wonderful students like you, talented students, researchers, faculty, programs, all of the great things that we do here at our university. We connect to those entities. But then also we serve to be the voice of UNLV. And so I do go to the Carson City on every odd year during the legislative session. I serve as our lead spokesperson at the legislature. I also serve in that capacity at the federal level of government and at the local level of government. And so you can say that using my voice is pretty much what I do on a daily basis on behalf of UNLV. I truly love my job, and it's just a joy to be able to, talk about the great things that UNLV has done, and especially, having the testimony of my years as a student at UNLV and now as a professor as well as a vice president. And we report directly to President Whitfield, and he's placed a priority on community engagement. So that's my spiel on the Government and Community Engagement Office at UNLV. Next slide. And so I think, using your voice and preparing testimony involves, like most things that we are very passionate about or we want to excel in, it involves a bit of research, it involves study, it involves being engaged and aware of current affairs. And so I put this here because most often people skip this and go right to comment on an issue or perhaps engage themselves or involve themselves in an issue publicly, but maybe they haven't yet done the research and homework to understand how to be more effective within the process. And so a lot of times you'll see folks make a big splash, but then maybe nothing really happens as a result. And I think it's often because they haven't taken the time to do the homework to understand how to be effective. And where that begins is knowing the process. And so I have and many of you are probably are too young to maybe remember, but there was a show where they had a song about, how a bill becomes a law. And it was, I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Hopefully you all know that. I think it's a really great little song that helps you kind of understand the little iterative points of how an idea makes it to law. Oh, great. People remember the song. Woohoo! I love to hear that. And so just understanding how that happens at each level of government is helpful. But in addition to that, and I'm going to get into some of the open meeting efforts that we have here on campus, you should also understand that process as well. And so you really got to make sure you understand, the different jurisdictions,
Now that we
the
have
process that I think
additional people.
all right. We had a little bit of a DJ hiccup there. But at any rate, and so understanding the legislative process at each level of government and in public meetings is going to help you be successful. Now, open meeting law is something that is, pretty wonky, but it is really how meetings are conducted publicly. And there are specific guidelines for which how meetings should be run. And that's actually written into law. So when we have Board of Regents meetings, or when we have an alumni association meeting here on campus, or a foundation meeting or CSUN meeting, they are following Robert's Rule of Order, which is the foundation for just how to have decorum in a meeting. But as far as how the meeting should be publicized and how the general public would become aware of the meeting and all of the nuances for how the meeting should take shape and how public comment is going to be incorporated, that is found within the open meeting law. And that's NRS 241 is where you find all of the guidelines in our Nevada revised statute in terms of open meeting law. And again, your success in this process or in understanding how to be successful is by knowing the process. So that's significant. Next slide, please. So I've decided to start with just the government aspect of this because that's usually what people think about when we're talking about public comment and showing up and standing at a podium and providing excuse me, providing substantive commentary on issues. where often we see that in the media, especially, is in government spaces. So we have Clark County, we have City of Las Vegas, City of Henderson, and North Las Vegas here locally. And all of them are different and have different boundaries and jurisdictions. And it's important to understand that because what you don't want is to, let's say, show up for public comment at the city of Las Vegas when really you're talking about a county issue. And so those people on the dais at the city of Las Vegas would be unable to help you or to do anything about your comment because it's not in their jurisdiction. So you want to make sure you understand the nuances that separate each of those municipalities and then the county. And fun fact, UNLV is in Clark County. We're in considered unincorporated Clark County. And so we fall under the oversight and jurisdiction of the county, not the city of Las Vegas, not Henderson, and definitely not North Las Vegas because we're, excuse me, pretty far from there. But we fall under the county. Next slide. With regard to state government, it's important that you understand the different entities that are included within state government. As I mentioned earlier, we have the Nevada State Legislature, which meets biennial every 2 years, 120 days every odd year. We also have the Nevada System of Higher Education Board of Regents meetings. And so that's another, state entity that has opportunity for public comment. We also have interim legislative committees that meet outside of the Nevada legislature. We have what's called the Southern Nevada Forum, and those are meetings that are formulated within Southern Nevada specifically to help the formation and development of a legislative agenda that would be around advocating for needs and issues that are germane to Southern Nevada. And then there's also Nevada State boards and commissions. There are a plethora of those. And I put the website here for you to be familiar with those and understand if you have issues you'd like to, present or, make comment at any of those meetings as well. I'm a former member of the Nevada State Commission on Women, and we also followed open meeting law, had public comment, et cetera. So you want to familiarize yourself with those opportunities as well. Next slide. Excuse me, federally, there are, I think, fewer opportunities, for public comment just because it is much more, the issues are much more broad in the sense that they are impacting Americans generally on a national scale. And then things tend to take a bit longer sometimes because we are following issues between one congressional year through another. And then you throw on things like a presidential election year, like we're experiencing this year, that also creates a bit of acrimony, if you will, on the Hill. And so I say all that to say it's important to know issues as they move through various congressional years, as they move through the process, they're heard in different committees. Important to understand that process, which is extremely different and a bit more nuanced. There's federal appropriations processes where you can receive funding opportunities. And then there's also opportunity through federal agencies where you can also provide comment and through written opportunities as well as public comment. Next slide. So at UNLV, we have opportunities for you to engage yourselves and to prepare public comment, both in written and verbal form. And those are avenues through Faculty Senate, CSUN, GPSA, our foundation board, our research foundation, and the Alumni Association. And the key for these organizations, and like any, is you need to understand what's on the agenda. You've got to make sure that you are following the activity of these bodies so that, again, you make sure that your public comment is targeted, it's timely, and that it's specific to something that is on the agenda being discussed at that moment. The worst thing is for you to have excellent, amazing, passionate public comment on an issue that isn't even being deliberated, right? Because then perhaps your the effect and emphasis of what you're trying to provide doesn't quite land well. And so timing is key, and understanding what's on the agenda is also significant. Next slide. So in addition to understanding both process and jurisdictions, and then I would add on to that knowing issues. You need to know who you're talking to, right? That's very important. And usually when I give lectures on engaging in the process or what I call rebel advocacy training, which is really my way of how do I get more rebel voices at the legislature and all of these bodies of government to help tell the UNLV story. It's important to know who you're talking to. So when I give these lectures, usually I often ask the crowd, how many of you, and be honest, raise your hands, how many of you know who represents you? Meaning, how do many of you know who your assembly person would be, your Senate representative, your federal representative, your Senate or congressperson, your school board person? The average person doesn't know these things, but they should, because obviously we're voting, hopefully, and participating in the electorate process. So that means we also don't know who we're voting for. And so one of the ways in which you can learn who represents you in particular is that there's a website right here, and thank you for adding that, Alyssa, in the group chat, where you can simply go there, click on a link that says elected officials, type in your address, and then it will populate for you all of your representatives in all areas, even down to the county clerk and the constable and all of those positions that you probably didn't even know existed. And so that's a really quick and easy way for you to understand who represents you so that you know who to contact when you're trying to advocate around a specific issue. In addition, you can find out through the websites of the various government entities who's on the dais, who will you be presenting to. Are you in a Board of Regents meeting? You need to know who those 13 regents are and maybe target the regent that is, that represents your area and where you live so that you can personalize the message. And so I can't emphasize enough that knowing who you're speaking with absolutely matters because you want to be targeted in your messaging. Next slide. Excuse me. And so in that regard, you might be wondering who represents UNLV. Well, we are fortunate to have two rebels represent us. So Senator Fabian Donyate is a UNLV alum. He has a master's in public health, and he's actually the chair of the Nevada State Senate Health and Human Services Committee. We also have Howard Watts, who is an alum, and I believe he graduated in the sciences, perhaps engineering, but don't quote me. And he's also an alum, and he represents us in the assembly. And then our commissioner representative is Commissioner Jim Gibson. Byron Brooks represents our district on the Board of Regents, and Brenda Zamora is our representative on the Clark County School District. And so I give you that as an example of understanding who represents us. So these are the people that I start with when I have a UNLV issue, whether it's something I need, whether it's an ask where we need funding, we need support, or we need some sort of a policy change. I start with these individuals. Or even if it's something where I'm saying, hey, there's a piece of legislation here that's harmful to us, or there's an issue with an organization where they're creating legislation that's harmful to us. I start with these individuals because they represent us. They have our voice. They are obligated to put the UNLV perspective out there. And then from there, I talk to their peers. But in doing so, I say, well, I've spoken with Senator Donyate. I've spoken with Commissioner Gibson, blah, blah, blah. And so that helps me then to have even more of a easier entree into the discussion with their peers. So just wanting to give you that example of understanding who represents us. Next slide, please. So there are many methods of engagement, and I've listed some of them here, most of them here. And, by and large, showing up is the best method of engagement. You get a chance to have some, eye contact, and I think you can get more connected with issues, with your representatives, with people, understand what our representatives are passionate about, also understand what they don't like. And a lot of times that's missed when you're trying to stream or when you're not there in person. And so to the extent that it's possible, I highly recommend being in person. There are opportunities for you to give public comment via phone, and also streaming hearings, but in person is definitely your best bet. I mentioned streaming hearings, and that's also an avenue for you to pursue public comment in person or via phone. You can also do written public comment. And then print journalism is important because you want to understand sort of the local play or state of play around your issue and the most recent information. And you know that by reading the Review Journal, reading the Wall Street Journal, reading the New York Times, the Las Vegas Sun, the Rebel Yell, right? If there's an issue here on campus, you want to make sure that you've understood and read the Rebel Yell, which has excellent writing and gives very in-depth perspectives, I believe, in a 360 perspective on many issues. And so I want to highlight that as a resource. Social media, obviously, we all benefit from social media, and many of our elected officials are on there regularly providing updates on their votes and things that they're passionate about. So that's a real, great way to be involved. Emails work as well. You can offer to, do your comment via email, or you can follow up after your public comment in person with an email, which is helpful. And then there's position papers, and I'll get more in depth with that in a future slide. Next slide, please. So the way that I like to start in terms of trying to prepare what you're going to say, because public comment is usually 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It depends on what's on the agenda and how many people are lined up to give public comment. But I think that it can't be any less than 2 minutes by law. And so the key here is brevity and to be succinct. And one of the ways that I like to practice with folks, if I'm in an in-person setting doing this training, is that, we talk about the elevator speech and how is it that you perfect that elevator speech? Because a lot of us have great ideas and, but when that spotlight gets on you or you are standing in front of, Senator Rosen, for example, and maybe you get a little starstruck or gun shy or you forget, it's best that you've prepared yourself and perhaps practice what's called an elevator speech. And yes, I do have a picture of the elevator going to the grad college and the Office of the Government and Community Engagement on purpose. So yay. But the elements of the elevator speech are as follows. In about 60 to 90 seconds, you want to say your name clearly. You want to say all of this clearly and enunciate so that people understand what you're saying. You want to state your name, your district, which you should have known because you've looked up on that website and put in your address and understand your district. If you're not talking to your legislator or your representative, mention who represents you. Maybe share a little bit about yourself. You're a student, you are a social work student, you are an engineering student, and blah, blah, blah. And then you care about this issue, and or this issue is blah, blah, blah. And why is this important? Why do you care about this issue? And then talk to them about why this issue should be important to them. Explain the impact of the issue and how you'd like for them to vote. How, you want them to vote in the affirmative? Why? And what would be the impact? If you want them to vote in the negative, why? And what would be the impact? Explain that. Always leave with how they can contact you for more information. You want to offer yourself to be collaborative and helpful because perhaps you have a perspective that the lawmaker has not considered or the person on the board hasn't considered, and you want to offer yourself to be collaborative. Nobody likes to feel attacked. Everybody is human, and at our core, no one wants to feel attacked. And so kill them with kindness and politeness and help to be part of the process and collaborate. And then obviously thank them for their time. So if I were to do a little rundown for you, I would, as a practice, I'd say, hello, my name is Constance Brooks. I'm in District 4, and my representative is Senator Julie Pacina. I am an employee at UNLV. I care a lot about parking, and we just have not enough of it on our campus, and I would like to see more funding for parking. And this issue is important because parking is expensive for our students and for our faculty. We don't have enough spaces, and it's a barrier toward student success. The students are circling around looking for spots, worried about parking tickets, and on and on and on. And this is important to you because if students are faced with a barrier before they get to class and having to worry about parking, what does that do for them in the classroom? And that impacts their ability to be successful as a student. And so I would like for you to vote in the affirmative for more parking and more funding for parking at UNLV. And you can contact me at my email address, blah, 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 blah. Here's my phone number. I'm happy to give the clerk my card so that you can contact me. I would love to participate in the decision making. Please let me know how I can help you. Thank you for your time. So that's just a little example of how you can get all of that in without it taking over 3 minutes to do so. Succinct, to the point, and then they walk away fully understanding what you're asking for, why you're asking for it, who you are, and that you've offered to help them. So that's just a little bit there. So taking that elevator speech and formalizing it into actual public comment is really what we're talking about here today. And so what you want to do is to take your elevator speech, maybe elongate it just a little bit so that you can add a little bit more flavor. Maybe you've done some research, you have some data that reflects, barriers to student success, and parking is number one based on a survey done on college students across the nation, blah, blah, blah. But here is where you can sort of flex as a researcher or as someone who's considered an expert in a particular area, and you want to throw a few data points into your speech. But again, it follows the same format as the elevator speech. It is okay to use notes. I would say try not to read, but if you're nervous and you feel like you really are not going to do well without reading, then read your public comment and feel confident about that, because you're still getting your position and your perspective on the record, and that's really what matters. And this is also something where, like anything, practice makes perfect. And the first few times that you do this, you will likely be nervous and you will likely need notes, and that is okay. You just want to make sure that your testimony lands well and that folks walk away understanding exactly what you're asking for. And so again, you're going to try not to use notes, but read if you need to. State your name and district, who you represent, your role within the organization, name the issue, the agenda item or the bill, the position that you'd like for them to take, why you want them to take that position, the impact of making that decision, and then you want to offer to assist in the development of amendments, research, or anything going forward. If they are creating a little coalition of stakeholders to meet and further deliberate about the issue, perhaps you offer yourself to be part of that process. And then you also want to end with thank you. And definitely you want to be as brief as possible and concise and to the point. Social media is another method of engagement and technically is a way of publicly commenting, and it can be done in a professional way. However, it's not something that can be utilized on the record per open meeting law. So you're not going to find lawmakers, reading. I mean, they will read within their comments sometimes. I've got, 800 Twitter or X, excuse me, posts saying that I should vote this way on this issue, and I want to make sure I'm listening to my constituents. They'll make reference to it, but as a member of the public, your social media post is not a method of public comment, technically. And so you can use social media to follow issues, to engage with elected officials, to follow them and understand how they're voting on issues. And it's a great way in real time to stay involved. And there are many lawmakers who tweet in real time as they're voting. So it's highly utilized, but it's also public, and exercise caution. I think we are all familiar of, opportunities or instances, I should say, where students or the public in general maybe said a few harsh things or have maybe some things they're not proud of on their accounts. And then that gets kind of brought up as they're trying to do a positive professional endeavor in public comment. So say all that to say just to exercise caution and to be careful is really the key. Next slide. Position papers are useful, otherwise known as white papers. And white papers really serve the forum to provide compelling research. Whereas if you can't get your testimony succinct, maybe you want to provide just in your testimony a stage for which you can that would lead to a position paper. So you can announce yourself as, I am a PhD candidate studying reproductive rights, and I would like to offer my white paper and research on this particular issue. But here in my comment, I'm going to talk about XYZ, and then offer yourself as a resource. So the position papers need to be compelling. They should be brief. Um, Even 5 pages is too much. You want to do no more than 2 to 3 pages on a particular issue, because you lose people. As you know, information is happening in a rapid fashion, and happening back and forth quite a bit. And so the time that you would spend on writing something that's 4 and 5 pages would not be worth it, in the sense that the lawmaker likely won't get a chance to read all of it. So make sure it's brief. This is, again, a great way to showcase yourself as a resource. And then you can connect your research to national trends and best practices. This is where you can kind of highlight how this localized issue fits into the greater scheme of a regional issue, or even a more of a national issue. Next slide. And so we're reaching the end of my presentation, and I want to leave the remainder of the time available for you all to ask questions. But I'd be remiss if I didn't offer you an opportunity to understand a little bit about the political activity guidelines through UNLV per the Board of Regents policy handbook, and our policies here within UNLV. UNLV is nonpartisan. We are a public institution. We do not support candidates. We do not financially provide any campaign contributions. We're nonpartisan. We are neutral in all races. We get asked for a position on which candidate, or try to help, and candidates do reach out for help. We're unable to provide that service because we want to remain neutral, as we're a public institution. And In addition to that, we do not support ballot initiatives or questions. We do not engage ourselves in campaigns that generate support in the affirmative or negative around particular issues. UNLV campus email should not be used to distribute political materials in any form. You should do that on your personal accounts. If you want to make your peers aware through student government about issues, that's definitely appropriate. But outside of that, and asking your students, your peers and colleagues to vote on an issue in a certain way, and using UNLV resources to do that, that is frowned upon and not allowed. And so that's more of an issue that we have found with faculty more than anything. We all get excited about issues and want to, spread the word as much as possible. So just want to caution you about those guidelines, and I'm happy to serve as a resource to help you understand that, as well as all of the other slides and information that's been presented. And so we'll go to the last slide that offers you my contact information, and wanted to make sure you have that. And please come by and visit at any time, or email me. I'm happy to help. So that concludes my presentation, and I will rest my voice for just a second and allow you all to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brooks. So yes, you're welcome to raise your hand, unmute yourself, or type any questions in the chat from today's presentation.
Hi, Dr. Brooks. My name is Cecilia Turman, and I'm a graduate from the College of Education. That was a very good presentation. I live here in Las Vegas for many years, and my neighborhood is, let's say, the historic neighborhood of Las Vegas, Huntridge Village, and that is pretty much on highlight. And we are having an issue here that's like a park, our community park, Circle Park, that's one of the first parks here in the city, and it's closed for 4 years already, and it was closed because there were some homeless there. So we've been requesting for them to reopen, because they say, oh, please, let's close. We're going to work on that. We're going to renew the park. We're getting a grant, and pretty soon the park is going to be reopened much better. And we're going to have security there and no more homeless. This is being taken care as well. Okay, so never happened. And now we are positioning ourselves. See, so this is like District 1 of Las Vegas is a representative of our Congress representative, Dr. Dina Tyrus.
Mhm.
And we have a commissioner here, and the commissioner, since she assumed that she never did anything. She's the one who proposed to close the park, got the grant, and redo it, but it never happened. So now, at this point, what do you think that is going to be the next step so we can get our park reopened?
Well, thank you, Cecilia, and Cecilia, is that accurate? I've lost
Yeah,
everybody
you
this
can
week.
call me
Okay, thank
Cece,
you.
if you prefer.
Okay, thank you very much, Cecilia, for being here today and taking the time. And also, wow, you are very fortunate to live in the Huntridge area. I have a couple of friends who live there, and it is such a gem with such rich history in Las Vegas. And I completely understand why, as a resident there, you would like to see your park be better utilized and revitalized and just be more integrally, part of the neighborhood and the family fabric that's there. So I completely understand that. But it sounds like that, well, one, I believe Huntridge is part of the city of Las Vegas. So it's under that jurisdiction. And so your advocacy would largely be through the representative that is, and I don't know who that is off the top of my head, for that area of Las Vegas. But in addition to that, because there's a homeless component to it, Clark County would also be of assistance because the city and the county work together in order to help find solutions for the unhoused, excuse me, I don't mean to use the word homeless. A good social worker would use the word unhoused. And so in order to address the unhoused, it is a multi-jurisdictional effort. But the other thing that I would start with is through, I believe there's a community organization or a community advocacy group for Huntridge, where it's comprised of your neighbors, and that they have organized themselves to provide advocacy for their neighborhood. And maybe if you were to do a search for Huntridge through the City of Las Vegas meeting archives, you might be able to pull up the last time they discussed it through the agenda process, and then
Yeah,
you
we
can
do
look
have
up
a
who the
meetings.
first person was and connect with those folks.
Yeah, oh, we do have an association here, and
Yes,
we
I
do have
wondered if you have like a homeowners association. I would start there.
no, we
And
don't have a HOA here. We have just a neighborhood association, but we do
right,
not have a HOA. HOA. I don't know if it's HOA or HOA, but
right. I didn't, sorry, I didn't
we
mean
don't have
homeowner, your neighborhood association. Thank you for correcting me. Yes.
it. And then we do have
Yeah.
the Mesquite Club. That's a very old club here in Las Vegas that was mainly the ladies of the neighborhood who opened that club there, but that doesn't open very often. But our neighborhood association, we do have a president, but nothing very um, strong happen out of the neighborhood association. You know what I'm saying? They pretty yeah. So, but
Well,
thank
I would start there and express your frustrations and that you were hopeful that you see different outcomes and in a timely fashion, and offer yourself to help them figure out how to make things happen in a way that's more suitable to you. But
you.
definitely start with your neighborhood association.
Yeah, I start putting some comments on the neighborhood Facebook page,
Smart.
and
Yeah.
saying that it's detrimental of our health for the children and elders. We need a place to get out of home and go for free to walk, to take our doggies. It saves a lot of money on health because it's releases stress. It's very nice to walk in a neighborhood park, blah blah blah, and then we won our park back.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
I'm gonna
yeah, start there. Go ahead,
I'm
Alyssa.
gonna
Thank
jump
you.
in. Apologies, Cecilia. I'm gonna switch gears because we have another question. So we have an anonymous question in the chat here for you, Dr. Brooks. Prior to your graduation date, did you envision yourself in the position you are in right now? Any advice for post-graduation?
I love that question, and the answer is absolutely not. I did not at all. In particular, when I graduated with my MSW, I had somewhat of a clue what a lobbyist was, but had really no idea. But it was through the preparation of the policy aspects in my MSW program that helped. I was hired to teach in the School of Social Work, which also helped. And then that was a springboard into a job at Clark County where I served in the county manager's office doing organizational development and working for the commissioners. And it was one of those scenarios where, preparation meets opportunity. And the county manager at the time said, I think you'd be great on the lobbying team, and you seem like a natural advocate. And I follow politics as my sports. That's my sports or politics, which I need to really change that for my own mental health. But anyway, so I always followed politics. So she just thought I would, be a natural, and she was right. And so a couple of things I'd say is one, you never know who's watching you, and you never know who can see the potential in you that you don't yet see in yourselves. So pay attention and listen. Don't say no to things, even when they scare you. And then also, if you're interested in something, ask questions about it. If you think this is the job you would like, ask questions. Figure out how is it you can be the lead advocate for UNLV or for an institution or in any way. And ask a lot of questions. I got here because one, I am a hard worker, but also I asked a lot of questions. Do not be shy. Don't let the fact that you feel maybe not so confident sometimes, or that imposter syndrome, phrase that creeps in often, don't let that stop you from speaking up and learning more about the person that's speaking to you, the person you're working with. You just never know what that question might lead to. So that's the kind of advice that I would give. Maybe a little bit esoteric and not so tangible, but those are tricks of the trade that helped me.
Thank you so much. Um, any other questions from the group for Dr. Brooks?
Cecilia has her hand up. Or is that from last time, Cecilia?
I was just clapping for your advice because it was great. Very good advice.
Oh, thank you, Cecilia. I
Okay.
appreciate that. I hope I get to meet you in person.
Me too.
Great, that'd be
Hope
awesome.
to see you soon. Very good
Yes,
job here in this presentation. I love it.
thank you very much. And thank you, Miss Evelyn Thompson. I didn't, it left the screen, so I'm sorry I didn't get your last name, but thank you, Evelyn.
All right. Well, if there are no more questions, I think we're okay to wrap up. And thank you so much for being here today again. For everybody out there, I did drop our workshop survey in the chat. So if you have a moment to just share some feedback, that really helps us as we'll start planning for next year pretty soon. So thank you to everyone who joined to listen in today. And thank you again to Dr. Brooks. I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. I wish you all the same. Have a great semester. We're at the halfway point almost, so woohoo. All right. Hope to see you all at graduation. The best part of my job, by the way. I love graduation. See you later. Take care.